And now it is my great honor to introduce the amazing Linda Silverman. Um, so I have known about Linda Silverman for many years and have followed her work in a lot of regards, have worked with people that Linda's worked with, have met Linda a couple of times. And so having her here, I'm a little fangirly. I just have to tell you, I'm super happy to have you here. Um, so Adrian shared the Columbus Group definition of giftedness. Linda
Right.
is one of the founding members of the Columbus Group and was a big part of creating that definition that really talks about the qualitative experience of being a gifted human. So it's pretty cool that we have that parallel too. And Linda's a prolific writer. I was looking at your Vita, Linda, on your website, and oh my gosh, I can't even believe the whole list of things. But I do want to tell you this book here, it's Upside Down Brilliance, changed my whole entire perspective on giftedness. I got this when my kids were young. I was like, okay, we don't have to be textbook gifted. We don't have to be, perfectly academically successful in order to qualify as gifted. We have different ways of approaching the world, and so that upside down brilliance, the visual spatial model, um, has had a huge impact on my life and on my parenting. So, and my kids are now adults and they know all about you and your book too. So it's made a big difference in our lives. So I am going to stop talking because this isn't about me. This is about what you have to tell us. Linda, before we start, do you want me to let you know when there are questions in the chat? Do you want to monitor it yourself, or do you want to save questions for the end?
I think that if we save questions for the end, that'll be easier for me.
Okay,
And
that's great.
I'll get to see everybody.
Okay, perfect. That's what we'll do. Okay, wonderful. Well, take it away.
Well, I'm thrilled that Adrian's talked about asynchronous development and overexcitabilities because now I don't need to talk to you at all because you've already heard my presentation. No, but I'll just expand on this. But if I had heard hers, I'm sorry I came later. I would have been able to interface with it more. But I want to start by really telling you how thrilled I am to be talking with homeschoolers. Um, Big fan. And I think that what you're doing is amazing. If you're here wondering if you should homeschool, I'd like to spend a few minutes before I go into the inner world of the gifted, just talking about why I feel homeschooling is so important. And I want to read something to you. This is a special gift for all you homeschooling families. Um, this is the best article that I ever published in Understanding Our Gifted, which was a newsletter I founded this in 1989. And the name of this article is Learning to Fly, a Homeschooling Retrospective. It was written by Eli Alexander when he was at Harvard University. And it's absolutely brilliant. I just want to read some excerpts because they'll be so close to home and affirming. Cracking the shell. Picture yourself in a bare white room, small, cornerless, and without enough air. No door offers access to the world beyond. No window shows a glimpse of other things. No carpet softens the hard floor. No art graces the encroaching walls. Without furniture, you shift your posture from one to the next, all somehow uncomfortable in the cramped space. You have no telephone nor other means of being heard or answered, even your own voice shouting, hollering your individuality out loud, results only in inward echoes. Your small supply of food slowly dwindles. It seems that there is nowhere to go, and yet, faintly, Beyond the walls, you know, for when you are silent, you can hear it. Someone is singing. It is suffocating and uncomfortable for a young bird ready to hatch to be trapped within its shell without room to stretch the life that moves inside it. It is equally unpleasant for a child to be trapped in an educational system that does not work. That was how he started the article. But I want to read you a few more excerpts that I think really will hit home. We all decided that the time had come to try the homeschooling option. My parents procured copies of the new Vermont state rules and regulations. And with Miss Kathy Carney's advice, we designed a complete individualized curriculum. We even dared to submit it and dared further to hope that it would be approved, going so far as to neglect the end of summer ritual of buying new clothes for school. On the day before the school year began, we were notified that our study proposal had been accepted. I was free at last. New feathers, new wings. When a new hatchling emerges from the confinement of the egg, it discovers a place of unexpected size, filled with amazing multitudes of sights, scents, and sounds. The vastness of the multifarious world is intimidating. Yet from the first, the young bird senses that this is home. It fluffs its thin feathers and settles down, knowing that it is right where it belongs. Eight years ago, home study was an entirely unfamiliar idea to most people that I encountered. Today, although many have heard something or other about this odd topic, a wide curiosity remains. Most new acquaintances bubble with interest when they learn that I skipped out on high school. And almost all adult questioners begin their inquiry in the same way. It runs something like this. You study at home, do you? Then what do you do about socialization? I have always found this surprising and not a little distressing. In many cases, these people have already granted that public education is easily bested and consider social interaction to be the only worthwhile thing that a student can receive at public school. Another possibility, worse yet, is that they feel socialization to be more important than education at an institution created with the specific intent of educating children. I have been tempted to ask certain of these people if they would favor 6 hours of recess during each school day so that the socializing that goes on then would suffer less interruption by books and such things. Most public schools provide an unrealistic and frequently a harmful social environment for their students. The familiar specter of peer pressure is difficult to exercise and dangerous to ignore. Assaults on a student's integrity and self-respect occur with alarming regularity. Many of the friendships that develop among school students are associations of convenience only and rapidly fail when graduation renders them unnecessary. Furthermore, the world at large is simply not composed entirely of one's age peers. If a child learns to relate only to others of the same age from the same town, he or she is likely to encounter difficulties when adulthood and its challenges approach. I can say with confidence that I did not miss public school socialization, and I was certainly happy not to be forced to spend half of each day with a group selected for age and not compatibility. Wanted to share that with you. And I have a few more slides that I hope you'll bear with me. I may be repeating what you already know and preaching to the choir, but there may be just a few people here who are wondering if this is the step they should take. Developmentally advanced children are at risk in a society that prizes sameness. Human societies have severely and successfully limited the realization of individual promise. That was written by a former Commissioner of Education, John Gardner, who wrote the book Excellence, Can We Be Equal and Excellent Too? In school, for every child with recognized gifts, still another goes unrecognized. There are countless cases of vanishing giftedness, those children whose talents are lost through lack of detection and nurturing. Unrecognized and undeveloped talents may be lost permanently. A potential violinist must have a violin and continuous nurturing of this ability to fulfill his or her potential. We can never know how much talent has been lost for lack of discovery and development, nor can we assess the magnitude of that loss to our society. The music that was never composed, the medical cure that was never discovered, the political strategy that might have averted a war. It is unrealistic to expect a regular classroom teacher to teach one child addition and another pre-calculus. Yet children of the same age may differ to that degree in their development. In society's zeal to believe that we are all created with equal intelligence, schools often discriminate against the gifted. When schools refuse to provide appropriate educational provisions for children with significant differences, their learning and emotional needs go unattended. Placing all students in the same program with the same learning goals, regardless of level of ability, just does not make sense. Many gifted children endure school. They do not learn anything there. No one would intentionally stunt the growth of a child. Yet this is what educational systems do when they're blind to individual differences in ability. This poster says equality is giving everyone a shoe. Equity is giving everyone a shoe that fits. Everyone deserves equal opportunity. Equal opportunity can never mean equal outcomes without obliterating individual differences. We cannot set the exact same educational goals for the entire student body. While the goal for one child is to be able to read books, the goal for another is to be able to write them. One student needs to master sufficient basic math to balance a budget in adult life, while another needs exposure to enough advanced math to be able to discover a new source of energy. One size does not fit all. A one-size-fits-all curriculum forces students to dumb down. The most capable students need to be allowed to progress and develop their abilities instead of being used as assistant teachers. So why do gifted children often get labeled lazy in school? A strong work ethic cannot be acquired if the student already knows the material. To instill motivation, it's necessary to allow each student the right to struggle. It is only through struggling that real learning occurs. If the curriculum is the same for everyone and gifted students learn it in much less time, we deprive them of the right to struggle. So how is a work ethic gained? How are students served by teaching them what they already know? How would they learn to work hard if the curriculum is so easy that school is effortless? Effort is kindled and a work ethic is gained when students wrestle with new concepts at a level of complexity that stretches them. And I want to just share with you the work of Lev Vygotsky. If you're not familiar with Vygotsky, I think that's a really important person for you to know about as a homeschooling family. He developed the concept of the zone of proximal development, ZPD. It's where when you teach the child, the work isn't too easy and it isn't too hard. It's just the right level of complexity and challenge. An appropriate level of challenge is essential for learning to be meaningful. The art of teaching is finding the right degree of challenge for the student, the sweet spot where the task is not too hard and not too easy. Now imagine how hard that is for a classroom teacher to do with all the students in the class. This ideal teachable moment inspires full engagement of the child. Homeschooling allows you to discover the ZPD of your child and to create learning opportunities at the optimal level of engagement. The aha problem solving releases endorphins that create exhilaration. Learning then becomes its own reward. How often do gifted children in classrooms experience the thrill of learning in their own zone of proximal development? Is it possible that lack of effort is related to lack of appropriate challenge rather than a character flaw in some of our brightest students? The beauty of homeschooling is that you can motivate them in ways that they can't be motivated in school. This is one of my basic principles. All children have the right to learn new concepts every day, rather than simply waiting while others learn. And waiting is what most gifted kids are doing in school every day. Just waiting. When is it my turn to learn something new? So thank you for homeschooling. And now I'll move into the inner experience of the gifted. These are the beautiful personality characteristics that accompany giftedness: sensitivity, intensity, curiosity, perceptiveness, complexity, reflectiveness, perfectionism. They're all wonderful parts of the gifted experience. And I'm going to be sharing with you several quotes today from Dr. Anna Marie Roper, who had created one of the oldest schools for the gifted in our country. It's still in operation, probably 80 years old now, the Roper School in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. And if you're familiar with Roper Review, that comes from the Roper School. And Anna Marie was the philosopher of our field. She really loved learning about the inner world of the gifted. She defined giftedness as a greater awareness, a greater sensitivity, and a greater ability to understand and transform perceptions into intellectual and emotional experiences. What a beautiful definition. It recognizes the awareness, the sensitivity, the unusual perceptions, and the qualitatively different intellectual and emotional experiences. Anna Marie was one of the members of the Columbus group, and her thoughts are embedded in the definition. I don't know whether Adrian covered the complete definition, but I'm going to read it again for you. Giftedness is a synchronous development in which advanced cognitive abilities and heightened intensity, and that refers to the overexcitabilities. Those of us who created this definition had just come from a training workshop on Dabrowski's overexcitabilities. And the heightened intensity that we put in there was to indicate all of the overexcitabilities. Then we come to Anna Marie, combined to create inner experiences and awareness that are qualitatively different from the norm. This asynchrony increases with higher intellectual capacity. That's easy to understand if we just look at how the cognitive abilities develop at a much faster rate than the physical abilities, which are related to chronological age. So a child with a 130 IQ is going to have a mental age that's maybe a couple years beyond their chronological age and the age of their physical capacities. But a child who's 160 IQ may be 4 years advanced mentally than physically. So asynchrony becomes more challenging as the child increases in intelligence. The uniqueness of the gifted renders them particularly vulnerable and requires modifications in parenting, teaching, and counseling in order for them to develop optimally. This is the only definition that recognizes the role of parents, the role of teachers, and the role of counselors in developing giftedness. So these are the basic components: advanced cognition, heightened intensity, uneven development. A lot of people think that's all that asynchrony is, but it's much more than that. Unusual awareness, feeling out of sync, vulnerability, and complexity. This is a phenomenological view. Asynchronous development is phenomenological rather than utilitarian because it focuses on the inner experience and vulnerability of the gifted rather than their usefulness to society. We don't call the gifted a wonderful national resource that needs to be mined because that's utilitarian. So how does this affect the child? Well, if you've got a 4-year-old child who's got a 6-year-old mind, that mind sees a horse and wants to recreate what she sees with Play-Doh. And she struggles trying to get her hands to create the horse that she sees in her mind. And she gets so frustrated that she just screams and throws the Play-Doh across the room. Her hands can't do what her mind would like her to do. And so asynchrony can often lead to frustration for these children. I'd like to show you a chart of composite scores from the WISC-5 that we submitted to Pearson, that creates the WISC, and Susie Rayford, who's creates the Wechsler scales, compared it, our first 53 kids that we tested, to match controls that were part of the normative sample. Now, the red line is the norm group. And you can see that there's very little asynchrony in that red line. The highest is expanded fluid index at 107. And the lowest is quantitative reasoning, which is math, which is 103. So your basic discrepancy in the norm group is 4 IQ points. But take a look at a gifted group, the group that came to Gifted Development Center to be tested. Theirs looked like a mountain range with deep dips and high peaks. The highest peak is the VECI. That's the Verbal Expanded Crystallized Index. It's made up of all 4 verbal subtests. Many psychologists only give 2 of them. They give vocabulary and similarities, but to get the expanded score, which is the highest score, you also have to administer comprehension and information. And if you do, all 4 of them gives you that highest score, 134 IQ. And the lowest score, in case you couldn't figure it out on your own, is processing speed. It even dips a half a point below the norm sample. The norm group was 104.7. The GDC group was 104.2. The second lowest was working memory, and that was 113. nowhere near the 134 that the verbal score showed. And that VECI is the best picture of the gifted child's real intelligence. The BCI, which is just the 2 verbal subtests, is the second highest. That was 132.6, not too different. The third highest is a composite score that I happened to develop myself. I called it the gifted index. And it came to me in a vision at 4 o'clock in the morning on November 16th, 2016. And I usually don't wake up. I'm a good sleeper. I sleep until about 7 or 8 in the morning. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was just woken up with this answer to a question that I'd had in my mind ever since the Whisk 5 came out. What would be the best picture of a gifted child that you can get from a Whisk 5? And what I saw were the 4 verbal, 2 visual spatial, and 2 mathematical. So the 4 verbal, where I already mentioned, make up the VECI. And the 2 visual spatial, one of them is considered fluid reasoning in the Whisk 5. That's matrix reasoning. And the one in the visual spatial index, that one is block design. And then the 2 mathematical, one is the figure weights. It's a pictorial, a balance scale where you're doing mathematical reasoning, but you're looking at pictures. And the other is arithmetic. And that one is an optional test that most of the testers don't give either. But if they give comprehension, information, and arithmetic, they can get the gifted index. The publisher decided to call it the EGAI because it's like the general ability index, but it includes 3 additional optional tests. And they called it the expanded general ability index. That was the 3rd highest, 128.9. Some of the others are lower than we would expect them to be because the Whisk is heavily timed. And the gifted are able to show more of their ability on a verbal subtest because none of the verbal subtests are timed, whereas most of the other subtests are heavily timed. But I just want to show you another study that our assessment special interest group from NAGC did with 390 gifted children all over the United States compared to the control group in the norm sample. Verbal comprehension, 131.8, highest score. Visual spatial, 120. Fluid reasoning, 120, almost 122. Working memory, 115. Processing speed, 105. Look at how discrepant those are. 26-point discrepancy. In our sample, there was a 30-point discrepancy from 104 to 134. And that lowers the full scale IQ score because that includes coding, which is a processing speed item. So that doesn't come out in the gifted range. It comes out 126.6. But you do see the asynchrony. You don't see that if you're looking at the control group. It just goes from 100 to 105.8. Not a big discrepancy. Now, discrepancies really increase when a child is twice exceptional, or we are now using the word multi-exceptional because often it isn't just 2 exceptionalities, it's many, all combined. Asynchrony is magnified when high levels of intelligence are combined with severe weaknesses. Giftedness masks disabilities, and disabilities depress IQ score. So we see extreme asynchrony when giftedness is combined with auditory processing disorder, sensory processing disorder, visual processing impairments, dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. We use a short sensory profile with all the families that come for testing. It's not the published one that was done by Winnie Dunn and her associates. It was one that was developed by Lucy Miller for the Star Center before the Dunn sensory processing test was published. And it also looks at auditory issues. It looks at visual issues. It has under-responsive seek sensation, which looks at ADHD. And it looks at children who are weak and have poor balance. So it's a wonderful tool that we've been collecting data on since, I don't know, 30 years or more. These are the types of issues, the multi-exceptionalities that we see most often at Gifted Development Center. If you'd like more information about asynchrony, if you want to understand why the Columbus Group was a secret society for 22 years, we finally were motivated to write our story when one of the leaders in the field announced that there was no such thing as the Columbus Group. And so we wrote Off the Charts, Asynchrony and the Gifted Child. So I think you would really enjoy this book. It was a winner of the Legacy Award for Scholars, and its editors are Christine Neville, Michael Piofsky, and Stephanie Tolan. And it's a Royal Fireworks Press book, which most of you probably know because they're the best supplier of homeschooling materials. And so if you already have their catalog, you can pick up Off the Charts from them. So few people really get it. Few grasp the fundamental experience of giftedness, the outsider status in a society suspicious of outsiders. And some of you who are choosing to homeschool your children, not because they're not challenged enough, but because you don't want to see them harmed emotionally in school. And there's good reason to believe that they might be. Our children are taught to don masks before they recognize their own faces. They are made to put their tender, pliable forms into prefabricated shells. That's a quote from Elizabeth Drews, an early gifted educator who wrote a great deal about the inner world of the gifted as well. The gifted are the only group with special needs who could pretend to be like everyone else. And that is what gifted kids are expected to do in a school setting. But hiding comes at a price. Most gifted people expend an inordinate amount of energy trying to hide their differences, all the while knowing they are not like everyone else. Instead of feeling better than everyone else because they're smart, more often they feel that their differences make them defective. Gifted children are at risk for being teased, bullied, and ignored in school. Many of them don't get invited to the birthday parties. Sometimes people don't sit next to them at lunch. They get talked about behind their back. There is real pain in being different. And this is one of Anna Marie Roper's slides. I feel invisible. I am invisible. Recess is the worst time, said David. I feel I don't exist. I cannot stand it. The other children just walk around me. A high school student wrote this decades ago, but I've always loved this quote. We are not normal and we know it. It can be fun sometimes, but not funny always. We tend to be much more sensitive than other people. Multiple meanings, innuendos, and self-consciousness plague us. Intensive self-analysis, self-criticism, and the ability to recognize that we have limits make us despondent. Many educators mistake the tracks, the visible achievements, for the beast itself. Achievement is easy to see. Giftedness is a dragon that can only be seen by those who conceive of dragons. Some of you who are Druidon folks recognize the Druidon dragon. My daughter, Miriam Darnell, developed Druidon about 35 years ago, and it's a creative writing workshop for mostly homeschooled kids, but some kids on Saturdays and after school. The sleeping dragon. If one notices that there is something special about a child and conveys a glint of recognition, the sleeping dragon within may awaken and begin to breathe fire into this little person's soul. IQ tests are dragon detectors. Instead of being valued only for what they produce, which frequently happens in school, the gifted need to be cherished for who they are and the unusual ways they think and feel. Impossible dreams are realized, unrealistic goals achieved, insurmountable obstacles surmounted by people whose vision is a more powerful reality than the limitations that most of the world accepts as real. So now I'm going to talk more about the overexcitabilities, windows into the inner world of the gifted. Gifted children are born with more intense reactions to various types of stimuli. Anything worth feeling is worth feeling intensely. Nothing is simple, bland, or colorless. Everything is electrically charged with rich, multicolored layers of meaning. Cognitive complexity, emotional sensitivity, heightened imagination, and magnified sensations. And this is a quote from Michael Piofsky, who brought us the overexcitabilities. Combine to create a different quality of experiencing, vivid, absorbing, penetrating, encompassing, complex, commanding, a way of being quiveringly alive. I've always loved that quote. Dabrowski identified 5 channels of heightened experience or overexcitabilities: psychomotor, sensual, imaginational, intellectual, and emotional. The overexcitabilities can be thought of as an abundance of physical, sensual, creative, intellectual, and emotional energy, which can cause inner turmoil, but they can also result in creative endeavors as well as advanced emotional and ethical development in adulthood. So what exactly is overexcitability? A greater capacity to respond to stimuli. Michael Piofsky calls OE original equipment. It comes with the territory. There's a term for it in Polish, which I can never pronounce, but it means superstimulatability of the nervous system. So this isn't just the gifted, but many neurodiverse individuals also are wired differently and experience these overexcitabilities. Psychomotor, that involves things like rapid speech, marked excitation, intense physical activity, pressure for action, being the one at a meeting who says, okay, we've talked about this long enough. Now what are we going to do? Competitiveness, compulsive talking, nervous habits, and workaholism. I used Linus as the poster child for the psychomotor. I'm sorry, I didn't. He's for sensual. Linus is coming up. Sensual overexcitability is enhanced sensory pleasure, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing. Delight in beautiful objects, sounds of words, music, form, color, balance. Overeating, buying sprees, and wanting to be in the limelight. So Linus is here, and here he is with his blanket and his thumb in his mouth. And he's just so perfect as an example of sensual OE. Sensual OE is my favorite. Here are some of the sensual areas that we all think about. So raise your hand if you like chocolate cake. That's an excitability because most people like chocolate cake. But now, if dark chocolate is a spiritual experience for you, that's an overexcitability. Imaginational overexcitability is the free play of the imagination, frequent use of image and metaphor. These are kids who are always talking in metaphors, and they imagine that there are all kinds of monsters living in their closet. They have facility with fantasy, and they love Druidon creative writing because of that. They have imaginary companions. Some of them don't even tell their parents about it. I had one client who I asked him if he had imaginary companions, and he said, yes, I still have 11 of them. And his father had no idea. He had never discussed them at home. Mixing of truth and fiction. We had one child who complained bitterly to her mother every day about how the teacher was treating Jenny. And every day would come home with another story, and the mother couldn't take it. So she finally went to the school and had a talk with the teacher about her treatment of Jenny. And the teacher said, who's Jenny? The child had invented Jenny. Low tolerance of boredom, need for novelty and variety. Here's a Gary Larson cartoon in which the child's sensual overexcitability, wanting cookies, and imaginational excitability, imagining crocodiles between him and the cookies, where the two overexcitabilities are in conflict with each other. Intellectual OE is what we usually think of when we think of giftedness. Curiosity, we see that in such young children. Keen observation, avid reading, love of theory and analysis, independent thought, sometimes very critical. Search for truth, preoccupation with logic, and thinking about thinking. They may ask why a million times. Now, emotional overexcitability is the most complex, and it's the heart of Dabrowski's theory. Intensified, complex feelings and emotions. Strong somatic expressions, such as tense stomach, blushing, sweaty palms, etc. Powerful emotional expressions, enthusiasm, ecstasy, affective memory, anxiety, guilt, depressive and suicidal moods. Capacity for deep attachments and relationships, and difficulty adjusting to newness, new environments. Compassion and empathy. I love this picture. I think we do see a great deal of compassion in gifted children. And when we don't, then I think we need to get counseling, because to have a gifted mind and no compassion is a difficult situation. A young child who has heightened emotions, coupled with advanced cognitive awareness of the suffering and perils in the world, feels helpless and afraid. So how can we distinguish overexcitability from ADHD, from sensory processing disorder, and from other issues? Well, as I mentioned, we give the short sensory profile, And we give an overexcitability inventory to all of the families that come for testing. And we give a behavioral checklist, which is looking at ADHD. So we're able to look at which things correlate with ADHD, which things correlate with sensory processing disorder, and which things are really manifestations of the gifted piece of the child. But if you go to a diagnostician, they're going to see whatever is their particular hammer. So if you go to a dyslexia specialist, they are very they recognize dyslexia easily, but may overlook giftedness. If you go to an ADHD specialist, you'll probably get a diagnosis for your child of ADHD, but you won't get the gifted perspective. And if you go to a gifted expert, their hammer is giftedness, and they see giftedness where others miss it. But because I have a background in learning disabilities, I got a PhD in learning disabilities from University of Southern California. So that enables me to look at dual exceptionality in ways that a lot of psychologists aren't familiar. But if you don't know whether it's overexcitability or it could be something else, look at all those yellow descriptors that I gave you. The yellow descriptors are the positive descriptors. If you see any of the orange ones, those are the negative aspects of overexcitability. But when you see those, then it's really important to rule out other causes. I mean, is this, for example, psychomotor overexcitability, or are we looking at ADHD? This is a cartoon by Buck Jones that was in Upside Down Brilliance. I had a parent last week who was convinced that her child had psychomotor intensity. She described this over and over and over and over again throughout the parent questionnaire. And it never occurred to her or her husband that their child might have ADHD. But when I looked at all of our forms, ADHD showed up everywhere. The behavioral checklist, which is a checklist for screening ADHD, was highly significant. The overexcitability, psychomotor, was at the top. And it's only at the top when the child has ADHD. Usually, if they don't have it, it's near the bottom. And intellectual overexcitability it ranks at the top. When we looked at the short sensory profile, under-responsive seek sensation was significant. That one correlates with ADHD. When I looked at the introversion extroversion continuum, they endorsed impulsive. They endorsed easily distracted. They endorsed risk taker. Those are certainly characteristics of extroversion, but they also happen to correlate with ADHD. Everywhere I looked, I saw ADHD and the parents didn't. And I asked them why that never crossed their mind. And this is a homeschooling family. And they said, because she concentrates so intently on things that she's interested in. Well, that's the thing. When you look at this, you're looking at how we think about ADHD. We think about boys who are hyperactive and never sit still. But we don't realize that it manifests different in girls and it manifests different in the gifted. In the gifted, you can concentrate for hours without stopping, without eating, without going to the bathroom, without getting tired, getting totally in the flow if you're engaged. But when you're not engaged, then you don't have the capacity to force yourself to get engaged, and your mind wanders and you're distracted, and it's easy for you to lose concentration. So it isn't that ADHD is the inability to attend, it's inconsistent attention and the inability to attend just when you're supposed to. You can only attend when you're interested. You have an interest-based nervous system. This child was showing psychomotor intensity in utero. This is how the mom described her: insatiable psychomotor intensity. She always craves deep pressure, movement, vestibular stimulation, and physical touch. When she was little, I told her not to touch the hot oven because she would get burned. She immediately touched it and got burned. She didn't cry. She seemed pleased to know what the oven and burns were all about. Once her mother squeezed her arm hard to show how rough she was being. She laughed delightedly and begged her mother to do it again. At around 3, she tried to climb a 4-foot plastic car on wheels, despite her father's warning. She fell, cried, and then jumped back up to climb on it again. At 4 years old, as soon as she could speak, after I rescued her from a rushing river, writes her mother, rescued her from a rushing river, she spluttered, I'm okay, I can do it again. Why did the parents contact us? Because they wondered if they should put her in school. I want to just share one other thing about this child that just delighted me, that shows just how smart she is. She asked her father to play the yes right now game. And her dad said, what's that? And she replied, it's the opposite of no, not yet. She's really would be bored in school. What they were doing with her in homeschooling was wonderful, but she was unable to concentrate unless she was interested. So what we do see in gifted children more than anything else is their sensitivity. Many parents recognize their sensitivity or their intensity when they're just toddlers. They worry about a lot of things that older kids would know about and they at their age wouldn't even be aware of. All who interact with gifted children must understand their unique characteristics. Then they will learn to appreciate themselves and develop their own unique paths. Listen. Listen deeply. Listen like a counselor. Listen for the unsaid. Try to give voice to their conflicted feelings. What are their yearnings? Anna Marie said, if we really listen to children, we will find an undiscovered gold mine of images, imagination, playfulness, love, and longing. If we ignore this, we might injure their souls. Look through the lens of giftedness. Is this a gifted problem? Intensity, empathy, perfectionism, difficulties finding others who think and feel like them, loneliness, outrage at transgressions that others accept, exhaustion from taking on all the burdens of the world, overcommitment, wanting to get the absolute most out of every minute of life. These are gifted problems, and they don't go away with age. You see the same experiences in gifted adults. Dreams are invitations to explore beyond the boundaries of how we define ourselves. Validate their ideals. Encourage them to attempt the impossible. Hold their hand when they become afraid and celebrate their successes. Every hour of life is precious. No experience is wasted. Each person's journey is meaningful and important, essential to his or her growth. Help them understand the deeper meaning of their pain. Crisis is an integral part of the development of oneself. You can't protect your children from pain. That's part of the life experience. But what you can do is teach them that they're strong enough to overcome pain. They're strong enough and intelligent enough to find methods of problem solving that are unique and different and work. The purpose of life is greater and greater consciousness. Ignorance is bliss is true. Greater consciousness comes with a price. Every person's journey to higher consciousness is heroic. Anna Marie said, it is not the quantity of action, but the quality of the basic bond which creates a firm foundation. The security of unconditional love is essential. When children can truly believe that parents are on their side, they will be less frequently blocked in using their real abilities. You can only help your children develop if you truly see their precious inner worlds. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, that was beautiful. And I've got chills going. I imagine that's going around the room. And we have had a lively chat
Thank
going,
you.
and I've saved out a few questions. And if I've missed your question, chime in and let me know. Okay, if I just read them to you?
You bet.
Okay. The first one, so we're going back in time to the early part of the presentation. I'm so thankful to be homeschooling my youngest and that I also had some years of homeschooling. Um, is there any particular curriculum that Linda would recommend for gifted 2E children?
No, but I can recommend the homeschooling guru that we send all of our homeschoolers to. That's Kathy Carney. And she lives in cyberspace. If you've been on the Hoagie's Gifted website, she's the one who updates all of those homeschooling uh, resources, and she's just fabulous. She understands gifted kids and homeschooling so well that she can help you design a program and find just exactly the curriculum in each subject area that will light your children's lights. So to reach her, you just go to KKEARNEY, K Carney, Maine, because she lives in Maine, MAINE, K Carney, Maine at iCloud.com. And she can help you find curriculum.
Okay. Sounds like she's somebody we need to have to a
Oh,
GHF conversation.
yes.
Okay. She's on the list now. It's official. Thank you for the recommendation. Next question. Any recommendations for a 2E teen who is gifted in executive function?
Wow. Gifted in executive functions. That's fantastic. I don't know how you pulled that off, but if you can find the formula, you could make a fortune selling it. So tell me what I don't know what the other E is. If it's not problems with executive functioning, which often goes with ADHD, what is the other E?
Whoever asked that question, do you want to? Oh, let's see, ADHD and high functioning autism.
Okay. Well, I think if you were to just appreciate that ADHD comes with the territory of giftedness, and that uh, there is the world that is opening up today for individuals on the spectrum is nothing short of amazing. My grandchild is on the spectrum. I've been living with him for 5 years. He takes wonderful care of me. And he's my IT expert who's moving to Detroit. But I want to show you a book. And if you don't have this, I think you would just love it. And there are also wonderful YouTube. It's ADHD is Awesome by Penn and Kim Holderness. So this is a terrific resource, and they have the funniest YouTube presence, and they do all of these hysterical uh, little vignettes of what it's like to have ADHD and why it's funny. But we've found that the higher the IQ, the more likely the person is to have ADHD. I have ADHD, and because of your ADHD, you're able to hyperfocus. So that's, I think, the beauty of what you can do as a homeschooler is follow your child's interests, because that will determine what your child is able to do in adult life. And instead of ADHD or autism being deterrents to careers in adult life, not true. They actually help you get fantastic at what you do in adult life. So that's my advice. ADHD is awesome.
Okay, thanks for the book recommendation. Okay, the next question, do gifted children tend to have a lower score for working memory? Also, do you have any numbers for processing speed?
Any numbers?
I'm not quite sure
Yes.
what, yeah.
Yes. Average processing speed in the 100s is typical of even
Almost
this.
ready for the cold. Cold.
Somebody's got their mic on. I wonder if we can.
I do.
Let's see.
Yeah.
In the front. Wait,
Oh, Kathy, is there any way you can turn their mic off? Oh, I think we got it. Okay, thank you.
So 100 processing speed is typical. And that was shown in that chart with the 390 children throughout the United States. Whereas working memory was 10 points higher. It was 115, which is in the high average range. And that's why since there is working memory and there is processing speed in the full scale IQ score, that's why we don't recommend full scale IQ scores for twice exceptional children. But the working memory is in the sample that we had at Gifted Development Center, I think was even lower than that. So maybe 112 or 113. Those scores just don't reflect very often how gifted the child is. You have to look at the verbal scores.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Let's see. Thank you for highlighting the aspects of attention and ADHD that go against common notions of what it is. Oh, this isn't a question. This is just a nice comment. Okay, here's a question. What do highly gifted but not 2E look like? Having a hard time seeing the difference between OEs and ADHD autism.
Oh, okay. I think that what you see in ADHD is some different issues with socialization, not necessarily picking up social cues, not being aware of or mimicking what the other kids are doing. And the social issues, we highly gifted kids who are not on the spectrum do not have social issues. They do prefer older kids if they're in a public school setting. They do better if they're in a school for the gifted or if they are homeschooled, because they enjoy the kids who are faster thinkers, who laugh at their jokes, who have similar values and similar interests. But they can connect with kids who are not highly gifted, and they may not have the kind of close friends that they're longing for, but they don't have an issue initiating contact or being invited to birthday parties or being around a bunch of kids. They have really good social skills, and kids on the spectrum don't. With ADHD, the main thing that we're looking at is impulsivity. Highly gifted kids who are not on the spectrum are not impulsive. They don't touch the stove after they've been told not to because they'll get burned. They're not going to jump into a rushing river and not recognize the danger. They aren't going to take a dare and jump off of a building. They don't hit somebody and then they're sorry. The best example of this is one of the testers at our office, who's an ADHD expert, Helen McVicker, tells the story. All of the kids are throwing snowballs. We're in Colorado and it's the first snow and the kids are having a great time and it's recess and out comes the principal and all the kids freeze except the kid with ADHD who keeps throwing snowballs and can't figure out why all the other kids are frozen. And then the kid who's still throwing the snowballs gets hauled into the principal's office and it just feels unfair. Like, I wasn't doing anything different from anybody else. I don't understand why I'm being picked on, because they didn't stop the impulse to keep doing what they were doing. It didn't register that, oh, we're in a different situation now that the principal's watching us. So impulsivity is the most important. The other thing is the risk taking. And that's why some kids actually need medication if they're in danger to themselves. And then there's also the kids who are spacey, who just cannot concentrate. And that tends to be more females than males. And they may not be recognized as ADHD until junior or senior high school. And one of the things you have to worry about with girls who are not hyperactive, not impulsive, but are easily distracted and spacey, is sometimes they don't set priorities very well, including priorities in relationships. So it's important to find out if a child actually does have ADHD, because there's lots of things you can do. And don't confuse ADHD with medication. Medication is just one solution. One thing I do want to recommend, one more book, and that's Raising Your Spirited Child by Mary Sheedy Kurchinka. She never mentions ADHD. She never mentions autism. She never mentions anything about giftedness, although boy, does she know about it. And she doesn't mention the overexcitabilities, even though one of her advisors was a Dabrowski scholar and she learned all about them. But listen to this. It's a guide for parents whose child is more intense, sensitive, perceptive, persistent, and energetic. If that's not the overexcitabilities, I don't know what is. She uses temperament as the basis, and she helps you understand how you can transform your family into a problem-solving family. And everything is described in a positive way. No negatives, it's all positive. It's such a beautiful book. She has a new version coming out in October, and I said, I don't see how you could improve on this one. But I wouldn't wait until October to buy it. Raising Your Spirited Child, just absolutely love it.
Yeah, I do too. I second that recommendation. Terrific book. Thank you. So here's a related question, and then we got a kind of an answer also in the chat. Do gifted children tend to have a different, like ADHD and autism, 2E children tend to have different reactions using medication for depression, anxiety, or other psychiatric medication? And then the comment by another attendee Fantastic question about medication reactions. Johns Hopkins pharmacy doctors told me the research isn't there yet.
Yeah.
So I guess from a clinical perspective, maybe do you have a thought about?
Yes. Every individual reacts differently to medication. Every single person. So there isn't a generalization I can make. I can tell you that one therapist that I work with, Linda Levitin in California, she's our director of our West Coast office. She thinks Lexapro works better for the gifted if a person is depressed. But it doesn't work for every gifted person. Every single person is unique. So before you put your child on any medication of any kind, I really believe you need to work with a psychiatrist who understands interactions of medication and can monitor how your particular child is reacting to a medication. It just is there's no research on the gifted and medication that I know of. And I do know that it's very unique to different individuals.
Absolutely. Lots of trial and error.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. How do we find mentors for PG teens?
I go to colleges for that. If the student is a mathematician, then I go to the math department. Or if it's a preteen, I might even go to the math education department. And I might work with a graduate student rather than a professor, depending on if you can find a good match, whoever you can find a good match for. A mentor, I wrote a whole book on mentorships. And finding the right mentor is harder than finding the right purse. It's a relationship, a marriage of two souls, of two minds, of two hearts that either works or it doesn't. So you might have to do a whole lot of trial and error before you find just the right person to be a mentor. But that person is a life changer. That's a person who will get your child interested in that subject for the rest of their life and help them make a career of it. If your child is wonderful in the sciences, I would go to your local college and read the bios of the different teachers to see who you think might be a good match and who your child thinks might be a good match. And then go and talk with that person and see if you can create a mentorship.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Here's a question. What are the differences and characteristics of profoundly gifted children and adults? That's a big question.
I think that profoundly gifted are very much the difference between profoundly gifted children and adults and gifted. Is that the question?
Let's see, what are the differences and characteristics of profoundly gifted children and adults? So I guess we have a second question about how different are the highly gifted, profoundly gifted kids from the MG kids? Moderately gifted, maybe?
MG moderately. Okay. That we've done a little pilot study at our office using our characteristics of giftedness scale. And we have 26 characteristics. We've found that at the 130 mark, which is the moderately gifted range, there was a significant difference in the number of characteristics that the parents endorsed compared to everyone below that. And that included 129, 127, 117, 107, 90. So when we think about public school programs usually having a 120 cutoff point, and that the majority of kids in a public school program are going to be somewhere around the cutoff score, like 90% will be near the cutoff score. That means most of your gifted programs are for high achieving, talented kids who aren't really moderately gifted. They're mildly gifted at best. The profoundly gifted is going to get lost in that. But in this pilot study, we found another standard deviation at the highly gifted range. And there were more characteristics endorsed by parents of children who were 3 standard deviations above the norm, 145 IQ and above. We also, and this is a clinical observation, I've noticed that when I added the very true to the characteristics of giftedness scale, so now we have not true, uncertain, true, or very true. The more very trues the parents endorse, the higher the predicted IQ. So there is a greater intensity that I see in exceptionally and profoundly gifted individuals. And that shows up in the intensity with which they mark the characteristics of giftedness scale.
That makes total sense, doesn't it? The intensity of the parents often matches the intensity of those kids. Huh?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, do working memory and processing speed relate to executive function?
Yes.
Okay. And the parent is wondering if they should get their child tested for ADHD if they struggle with an executive function.
Yes. I see a tremendous overlap between executive function and ADHD. All children with ADHD have executive functioning issues. And the first question, if your child has a low score in working memory, yes, you can get an ADHD evaluation for that. But what I would do and what I recommend that our parents do is get an audiological evaluation first. Find out if your child has central auditory processing disorder, because working memory, especially digit span, not so much picture span, but digit span is very affected by central auditory processing disorder. So in order for you to be sure whether you're looking at an auditory issue or an ADHD issue, it's better to rule out the central auditory processing disorder, or to do whatever might be needed for that if it comes out positive. If processing speed is your child's lowest score, again, that's could be related to ADHD, but it's also much more related to a visual processing problem because they're presented visually. One, coding is vertical tracking. Symbol search is horizontal tracking. So when I see a child with low processing speed, I send them to an optometrist and I get their vision evaluated to see whether there's a tracking problem and do they need vision therapy before I even recommend an ADHD evaluation.
Okay. I think those are pieces that are very often missed, the auditory and the visual processing. Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great advice. Thank you.
And if Adrian's on board still, I always send kids to OT first because I consider everything to have its foundation in sensory integration. The eyes and the hands have to be integrated together. That's done through occupational therapy. The two eyes need to work together. If the left side of the body and the right side of the body aren't in good communication, the left eye will be on one line while the right eye is on another. Or auditorily, there'll be a slower processing, slower timing of one of the ears. And instead of them going in like meeting like they should, so that you integrate the information from your left and right ear, they'll miss each other. So I recommend occupational therapy first. And in Colorado, I send a lot of kids to STAR Institute, which is the premier occupational therapy center that Lucy Miller developed.
Okay, all right, thank you. So here's a follow-up to another question, but what if they are highly empathetic and the multiple emotions in group settings drown them? Can a PG child with emotional overexcitabilities be misdiagnosed with autism?
I don't think so. I think there are a number of different things that indicate that the child has autism. One of the things that I've seen is issues with hygiene. And that's not a PG issue. That's the ASD issue. Another has been only wanting to do their own preferred activities and rigidity in once they make up their mind, not going to change their mind for anybody. That's not a PG. That's not typical of PG people. But rigidity is typical of ASD folks. Difficulty with eye contact, not a PG trait, but it is an ASD trait. I have a whole list that I can, that's part of our twice exceptional checklist. We have a checklist we give all parents of recognizing twice exceptionality, and we have a whole set of characteristics for autism, a whole set of characteristics for visual processing, auditory processing, sensory, dyslexia, ADHD. So that might be worth taking a look at to see how many of those characteristics your child fits.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Can anxiety and depression bring down IQ and affect
Yes,
thinking? Okay.
definitely. If a child is very anxious, it can affect how they test in every area. It has its strongest impact, I think, on working memory and on processing speed. And depression, if a child has anxiety or depression or ADHD, and they test and let's say they need medication, but they have a baseline. We've seen that after kids got medicated for any one of those, and then they retested on an IQ test, their IQ scores all went up.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, I mean, it does affect all the systems affect each other, don't they? All
Yes,
of
they
those.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
No question.
How important would you say gifted testing is if you already can see that your child is gifted? What more benefits can it entail?
Well, it's not a toggle. Either you are or you aren't. If you had a child, God forbid, on the other end of the spectrum, you would get testing. You wouldn't even think about it. You would say, I want to know what degree of intellectual disability we're working with here. I'd want to know what are the interventions that really work with this population. And it's if you're raising a girl, what I've found in girls is if parents just know that their kids are gifted, I know my child's smart, I don't have to get testing to find that out. Girls often hit a wall in the way mathematics is taught in junior high or in high school. And then they say, well, I guess I'm not smart, because they couldn't grasp the way it was being taught. But if parents have IQ tests, they say, well, we've got the proof that you really are smart, and we can work with this. I recommend that girls get tested before the age of 8 or 9, because oftentimes they don't want to be gifted, and they will bat their pretty eyelashes and they'll say, I don't know. And they know, and they're not going to tell you. So it's best to get them before they've gone into hiding, before they've learned to dumb down. But I'll give you a rather morbid reason why you should get your kid tested. And this, I'm sorry to do this, but I've had 5 friends that were not tested. And each one of them had something. One had Lyme's disease, one fell off of a second floor, 3 of them were in car accidents. And what they do after an injury is the insurance company makes you take an IQ test. And if you come out average, even low average, which is the 25th percentile, they say no damage. If you've had IQ testing that shows that you were at the 98th percentile, and now you're in the 25th percentile, you have proof that there actually was damage. And if you don't have that testing done, I think you need it for every child. I think every kid needs to be tested who's developing in an atypical way. You want to know to what degree. You want to know what the strengths, what the weaknesses are, and what does the child qualify for? For example, Davidson Young Scholar Program. If a child tests at 145, which is the 3rd standard deviation above the norm, they qualify for Davidson. You want your kid to qualify for Davidson, even if you never do anything with the Davidson Institute. Having that stamp of approval on your forehead is like becoming a National Merit Scholar at the age of 6. That's a door opener. That can get your child into the college of his or her choice with scholarships. I've created another opportunity for individuals who are 4 standard deviations above the norm, the profoundly gifted range. Now, I know Davidson uses, they use 145 as the profoundly gifted, but technically in psychology, that is not the profoundly gifted range. That's the highly gifted range. But I developed PG Retreat for families who are 160 plus. Well, you'd like to know if your child would qualify for PG Retreat. You'd like to know if your child qualifies for Davidson. So it's worth getting the testing for that reason. Amy, go ahead. Thank you for raising your hand.
Yes, sorry, that was my question. And I guess my question is also, so your answers make sense and thank you. I actually have boys, but what if they're already in high school and there have been, a variety of other problems, but would you then say that the testing that needs to be done, or, the testing you're recommending is by someone such as yourself, like not just a regular neuropsych testing, but it sounds to me like the way that you're thinking about things and doing things is quite specific, at least to other neuropsych testing that I've been familiar with in my professional life.
Well, I believe high school is a good time for testing, especially for 16 and up. It isn't a good time for 15s because they don't qualify for the Wechsler adult scale at 15. But at 16, having an IQ test and an achievement test can usually get them to qualify for some kind of a accommodation on their college board exams, like more time. If there's a huge discrepancy between their processing speed and their intellectual ability, they would qualify for more time. If you suspect that there are some other issues that are going on with your child, I think IQ testing can give you important information.
as to the specific things that are going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that sense, then anyone that does an IQ test would be like a reasonable place to look, or does it need to be someone who really understands giftedness? Because I don't think all psychologists that give IQ tests really, you know,
They don't.
yeah.
This is a great
I just
question to
I
end on.
just created this past year a course, a 28-hour course on foundations of gifted assessment, because psychologists don't get it. They only give the minimal number of subtests. They don't give the extra ones. They don't look at the extended norms. They don't know anything at all about the qualities of gifted kids. I had one child, this kid was reading Dante's Inferno at age 8. And the first psychologist that they went to said that she had a 117 IQ and that was a valid score. What 117 IQ high average kid reads Dante's Inferno at age 8? They don't understand the qualitative indicators of giftedness. The kid who says precisely and actually and asks those probing questions. But if you're experienced with the gifted, all you have to do is have a conversation with one of these kids to know that they're gifted. Like that anecdote that I told you, can we play the yes, right now game? Only a gifted kid could come up with something like that to challenge her father's no, not yet answers. So these are qualitative indicators of giftedness that only someone who understands giftedness is going to be able to put into the mix and say, this doesn't sound right. I think we have an underestimate. Because they're going to say, this was a valid test. Sandra.
We are past our time. If you're happy to take this one more question, Linda.
Oh, I'm happy
we're
to.
happy to.
I know that
We're happy to keep you.
I know that you're over time, but I just want to let you know that I'll keep answering questions for as long as you're willing to hang on here.
Oh my gosh, I'm afraid we'll keep you for days, but yes, absolutely. Let's continue on.
Okay, Sandra.
Silverman, thank you very much. I'm calling you from Ecuador. We
Oh.
have a very nice cases here, like 200 kids already identified. And under, yeah, it is a lot of work, but the government is doing nothing and the schools is just terrible. So my question is about this anxiety crisis that a kid could have during the test and how it affects them. My child is already in the Davidson Scholars Young Program, but the IBP is very, very low and the ICB is very high. So I'm concerned that it happens because of the anxiety that he was facing during the test, or it could be a real situation that is behind it.
Maybe there's a vision issue that you need to look at. Is that possible?
I already did, and also he was under all.
Everything is fine.
Yeah, it seems that everything is fine.
Well, I just I have a client from Ecuador that I just worked with this week. I don't know whether they've got optometrists in Ecuador, which is different from eye doctors. Eye doctors are ophthalmologists. They usually don't pick up if there's a tracking problem or something like that. That's something optometrists do. Did you have your child checked out at an optometrist?
Yeah, they check about the way the eyes are going, these things. It's supposed to be an optometrist, and I'm pretty sure that he is.
Okay. Yeah, anxiety can lower scores, but I like to look at the whole profile, and when we do when I do a consultation, I usually have parents fill out a lot of paperwork. You have to be motivated to get your child tested at Gifted Development Center, because we have you fill out so many different forms. And then I really get a full picture and I'm able to better tell what might be the cause, whether it's anxiety or whether it's something else. Sometimes some of the issues that get picked up are more subtle.
Hey. I think we could have a million questions for you. And so what I think we really need to do is invite you back, Linda. So that we
Maybe
can
I
do
could
this.
talk about twice exceptional next time.
We would absolutely love that. That would be amazing. Yeah, because that seems to be a real need here today.
Yes.
So I think there are 1,000 more questions in the room. I think we'll just need to pause here and just say there will be a next time with Linda. Is that okay with
Yes,
you?
I'd be happy to come back. You are my favorite people. There is an article I wrote on a multi-exceptionality that is in a special issue of Roper Review on overlooked issues of multi-exceptional. It came out last year. It's called The Role of Modalities, the Overlooked Role of Modalities in Multi-Exceptional children. So I think that talks about sensory, auditory, and visual issues and the things to look for. And that's in Roper Review. So thank you very
Okay.
much for inviting me and for publishing my little article in your journey e-journal. And
Well, how lucky are we to get an article from Linda Silverman? Of course, we'll publish anything you send our way.
so I look forward to the next time. Take care and have a great day.